The Democratic Party is in an identity crisis in national politics. Could Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker be part of the solution? Here to explain is Greg Bishop. He is an expert in all things Illinois politics and a great reporter. Greg, thanks for jumping on.
Casey, anytime. Looking forward to more of this.
Great. So Pritzker, I think many Americans aren't familiar with him. Of course, the governor of Illinois. Is he a rising star in the Democratic Party? I think the party's in identity crisis. Is it the younger AOC? Is it the legendary Bernie Sanders? Is it an unknown like Pritzker? Or what do you think?
Or, somebody like Gavin Newsom, right? We see obviously a lot of recognition with recent polling that the National Democratic Party is losing favor somewhat rapidly. Whether they get that bounce back after recent protests across the country against, Elon Musk, and how that could possibly taint Republicans for, say, the 2026 election, right? We'll be watching all of that, obviously, but it's clear after the 2024 election, Democrats have a certain impetus underneath of them now, pushing them to try to connect with voters. What those issues they're going to use to connect with, not too clear. But here in Illinois, it's a little bit of a different perspective than what you're seeing, homogenously across the country whenever you look at national polling, right? Several weeks ago when polling came out and showed that the public was actually in favor of a lot of Trump administration policies. And Trump himself had some favorability. I had asked the governor to discuss that. And, he, when asked about the polling, the governor said that Trump may be popular in areas of the country, but not in Illinois. And when you look at Illinois specific polling data, that tends to suggest that. However, the political shifting over the past 8 years, can't be missed. So Trump got like 40% of the vote in Illinois in 2016. In 2020, he got like 42% of the vote. So it's increasing. And then in 2024, he actually got close to 45% of the vote in Illinois. So clearly, there may be even some political shifting of sensibilities in Illinois. Now, how Pritzker plays into this, that's an interesting question, and something that I've seen for years now, even under the first Trump administration, how the Illinois Democratic governor elected in 2019 would inject himself into national politics. During the COVID pandemic, Pritzker was very vocal, demanding that Trump even, take over manufacturing facilities using war power acts to, manufacture ventilators, right? I mean, it was a constant drumbeat for several weeks how, Pritzker said Illinois needs these ventilators and Donald Trump is failing the people because he's not making them happen. So, I mean, things like that. And then the pushback on a whole host of other policies that Trump espouses that Pritzker seems to want to, again, inject himself into the national spotlight. But Casey, for years now, and at thecentersquare.com for Illinois, we've been reporting on all the times that Pritzker's been asked, is he running for president? It even, popped up back in 2019. And when he was running for governor, people, in the background were kind of asking questions. Well, is this just a staging point for possibly running for president? Come around to 2024, there was a lot of speculation that he was going to toss his hat in the ring. And then you had the shakeup of Biden stepping down and Kamala Harris being the pick for the party. And there were questions about whether Pritzker was indeed vying to be the VP candidate. He acknowledged that he's been in conversations with the Harris campaign, but obviously that didn't pan out for Pritzker. So it's an interesting question. Is Pritzker going to be the guy that he's a billionaire, he's got, $3.5 billion or something to that effect. He funds not just Democrat Party politics in Illinois. He's started national nonprofit, political action committees. He put money into that Wisconsin Supreme Court race. He has helped fund abortion policy initiatives in other states. So is he going to be the guy that has potentially the purse strings that he could put into the Democratic Party to project it further? And if that's the case, will he be the one that is going to be the candidate of choice? we're going to be watching that. Obviously, it's a storyline that we've been tracking in Illinois for literally years. But the governor's got an interesting timeline here for things to happen. Illinois elects its governor in off years. So our next gubernatorial election is 2026. That's 2 years before the 2028 election, right? For president. So, the question is the governor, is he going to run for a third term for Illinois governor? He hasn't announced that yet, but the question's always followed up with, what about 2028 for president? Right. Clearly, is he going to be the guy? Not sure. He's definitely playing the chessboard over the last 5 to 10 years, putting himself in certain places where he can be recognized nationally.
Right. Okay. So let's talk. I would love to hear from you a little bit about maybe the strengths and weaknesses of Pritzker. I think, the Republican Party has been through a total transformation in the last decade. It had its own identity crisis, and it seems we've come out with Republicans being truly America First Party, because not only is Trump dominated, but now his heir apparent, J.D. Vance, is a younger, really more articulate, politician who's the VP who could just inherit the whole movement and run. And I think he has a strong chance to do that. And he's pretty much down the line on the America First. So the Republican Party has been remade. I think at the national level, that could be happening to Democrats right now. They've lost a lot of their leadership. Pelosi has stepped down. Her replacement isn't so far really living up to the legacy that she left behind, I think. We're seeing, Obama took a real knock in the last election. I think his influence has faded somewhat with the public, maybe not behind the scenes, but with the public. Biden is gone. Hillary is done. And now, Bernie is so old that he kind of had his moment. As much as he has an influence, it might be too late for him, maybe not. But the party is having an identity crisis. The congressional Democrats are polling at an all-time low. And so if there's ever a time for a new candidate, someone that people don't know, for the Democrats to come out, I think this could be it, which is one of the reasons we're talking about Pritzker. So when he takes that debate stage, either in the primary or Republican, hypothetically, what are some of his biggest wins as governor that he can tout? And what are maybe some of his biggest weaknesses or failures that are going to be the first thing to come up when the attack ads start rolling?
I think I'll start with maybe what some could see as the biggest weaknesses, because it's something we've heard in recent months and weeks from Democrats that are holding rallies, for instance. I mean, not too long ago, you had Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hold a rally where Sanders got up and talked about how we need to push back against the oligarchy. He's referring more to Elon Musk and Donald Trump being billionaires, and now they're in control of the country. But what about the other billionaires that are in politics, right? Is it, one billionaire is okay if they agree with us and the other billionaire is not because they don't? Pritzker is a billionaire. Is that going to play against him amongst the very liberal base of the Democratic Party? Clearly, Sanders has been pushing that narrative for a long, long time, right? If you run to the DNC last summer up in Chicago, Bernie Sanders took the stage and talked about how we need to push back against the oligarchy and we can't let the oligarchy take over the country. Mm-hmm. And then it was either right after that or a speech after that, Pritzker gets on the stage and talks about how he's, a good billionaire, and kind of pushing back against Trump and trying to make fun of Trump for, whether or not he really is a billionaire. But regardless, I think that's probably going to be a big weakness, more of a characteristic issue. Now, the big, some may call them wins. Pritzker would call them wins. Here in Illinois, the policies that he's been able to push through, I mean, all the way back into 2020, in 2019, rather, when he took office in January, they rapid speed went and approved increasing the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025. So it was an annual increase of $1 a year. And now we're at $15 an hour in Illinois. That passed rather rapidly with Pritzker right after he took office. And then it went on to, certain issues concerning abortion. The state, and they passed a measure that said that they're going to remove parental supervision of abortion. So, a parent doesn't have to be notified of whether or not their minor child is going to get an abortion. So that parental notification issue, that passed. Pritzker has been very focused on what they call reproductive rights in the Democratic Party. So he's definitely championing that. He was very vocal and visible during the U.S. Supreme Court's leaking of the ruling and then subsequent ruling. So he's been pushing back against that, making a national profile on that. So there's a lot of very liberal policies that Pritzker has helped get across the finish line, even a ban on certain semi-automatic firearms in Illinois. Right after the governor signed that bill, he ended up traveling over to Europe, where he was taking part in, a global conference of leaders and business leaders and such, and he touted that he had banned certain types of semi-automatic firearms in Illinois. So these are the types of policies I think that Pritzker is going to really push and elevate, and point to his record in Illinois as a governor who gets things done. I think the nonprofit political action committee is big ideas. So he's got this kind of narrative that he's helping to foster or craft. Maybe that's going to come out in a bigger way here in the next few months to a couple of years before we get to the 2026 election. I've even heard recent interviews with Gavin Newsom, the California governor, talking about how the Democratic Party, he says, we need to get back to big ideas. So are these some of the things that we're going to start hearing coming out in the political conversation? Pritzker's right behind that. And whether or not he's going to be the candidate, and people weighing those pros and cons, that we'll be watching. Is the billionaire characteristic going to hurt him? But are people going to look the other way because they like his policies, in particular the Democrat base, about abortion, about firearm safety, or just standing up? And Pritzker's been pretty adamant on making the cable news rounds ever since before Trump got elected to now after Trump is in office, saying that people need to stand up. So yeah, it's an interesting question. A lot of prognostication here. Clearly that's kind of part of what politics is. But how that works in a primary is different than how that works in a general, right? You typically do see people go pretty hard one way during a primary, trying to separate themselves from somebody else they may see as weaker on the issues. But then when it comes around to the general election, how are general election voters going to take on the topics that Pritzker's discussed? From abortion to the Second Amendment to non-citizens in this country, to education policy, and just the role of government in people's lives. Having seen the general elections the past few years, it's a toss-up as to whether or not general election voters would support or oppose those types of things.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, of course, it is some prognostication. I think it's important that we begin to introduce the national audience, the rest of America, to Pritzker, because he could be a player. The Democratic Party is reinventing itself. And so at the very least, whether he ends up, committing or not, he's someone to keep an eye on if you are, one of those people who is following politics closely and wondering, who is going to be on the ballot in 2028. And if you're a Democrat concerned about your party and what the future of it is and who's going to step up and be a leader and all that, and who's going to take on Trump, I think Pritzker is in that short list of a dozen or so Democrats who has the name recognition, the power, maybe the money to put up that effort. But we're out of time. Thanks, Greg, so much. Appreciate your insight on this topic.
We'll talk again soon, Casey. Appreciate you.